Hello, I'm toycat and welcome back to the second channel video. And who is excited for the new election happening in the UK tomorrow? That's right, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is going to be electing a brand new House of Commons tomorrow, and in the ensuing chaos, anyone could become Prime Minister. It's very exciting, right? Except if we look at the data, like I've got behind me, you can see how there is actually only two real parties in any real contention, and even then, it's very clear Blue Party has a huge lead, so much so that it's very, very unlikely, as in we're talking, it's over 90% chance they're going to win, and it's very unlikely that the Red Party gets in. But even then, we're talking about a two-horse race where one of the horses is walking very slowly, and as a result of that, I would say, yeah, the result is pretty much decided. But the sad thing about this election is not what's going to happen here, it's the result of everything else, because this election is not going to be sad for the leader that gets in charge or the leader that doesn't. It's going to be sad because the people who really lose is going to be everyone voting. And you might think, what does that really mean? And yeah, I am going to be voting, by the way, but if you look at this opinion polls, you might be led to believe it's like a presidential style system where there's one collective pool. It's almost referendum style, but this isn't actually how this works. Having 43% of the vote can statistically lead to you not becoming Prime Minister despite having all of those things, because of the fact that the United Kingdom uses first past the post and a bunch of different constituencies. So here is the 2017 election mapped on a little thing, and you can see how looking at this, like any individual seat, has to be one, and you have to have a majority in said seat. So here's Kettering, for example, where the majority of people voted for Philip Hollobone, the Conservative candidate, over Mick Scrimshaw, the Labour candidate. If we pick another random seat like this one in Scotland, as you can see, majority of people voted for Ian Blackford. I think he's the deputy leader of the SNP or something like that, or at least in Westminster, over Robert Mackenzie. But if you look at the other parties, they're all in there in contention in this little bar graph. But what matters is not whether you get the majority of people. He only got 40.26%. If we go to Northern Ireland, it gets way worse. Like we get results where it's literally like 30% of people voted for the winning party here, because you don't need to win a majority in each seat, you just need to win the largest number. It's called a plurality, and that's what first past the post is. And you might think, well, why is this so sad? It's the system that they're playing under. Everyone should just learn to deal with that system. However, what it leads to is a couple of sad things. One is tactical voting. So here is the number of people who vote tactically in every election, and this is to me the most damning chart that exists. This is the number of people in Great Britain that vote tactically, which is defined as really preferring another party, but it had no chance of winning in this constituency. It's gone up from about 5 or 6% in 1983 to about 12% in 2010 and 2015, and even close to 10% in 2017. That means that 1 in 8 voters, 12%, are voting for a party not that they believe in, not that has values that they share, not that has policies they think can make the country better. They're voting for a party they don't believe in because they're so scared of another party. Imagine having an electoral system where some number of people are not voting because they believe positively, they're voting because they're terrified and they're willing to vote for a lesser party just to avoid that. Now imagine that's happening 1 in 8 times across your country, and it's a pretty dire picture already. But, 1 in 8 people, 7 in 8 people have got it great. I would actually argue this is much higher. I've seen so much tactical voting come out of this election, but let's say that's not a thing, right? Let's say that's not a thing you should be concerned about, except it kind of is, because the two-party system you can see is developed around that basic idea of like, oh yeah, even if you don't fully agree with blue values, and I can't imagine that the current put out there ones are ones that most people agree with. The biggest campaigning part that makes blue work is that, oh yeah, well at least we're not red, and same with red, at least we're not blue. The two parties are feeding on this whole thing of like, you should join us, you should start supporting us, you should start voting for us to avoid the other party. I mean, the anti-conservative, anti-Tory thing is like, you don't need to be a genius to see it in the United Kingdom, right? And this means that even though we have a 4 or arguably 5-party system in the UK, unlike most other countries which slowly go down to 3 or 2, the US has literally been a 2-party system forever. If you look, our other parties always fade just before the election because people slowly start to think like, oh god, I've got to switch parties so I can decide the new Prime Minister because I don't want that other guy more than I don't want the guy on this side, or vice versa, etc. It's a really, really terrifying thing. And even though if you did decide to vote for your guy, even if we can all overcome that because of this election map thing, because you have to win in lots of individual seats, and a lot of those seats have, again, very lopsided results, what you're going to end up seeing, also look at this one, East Yorkshire, Greg knight, really killing it there apparently. But you can see how like, even though this is a thing, you then have to overcome those numbers in each of those constituencies. And to show you what I mean by that, let's go over to this map right here and show you that even if you get a bunch of votes. So in 2015, this was UKIP's like breakaway election, but it also has a lot of other misrepresentations here. The Conservative Party got 50.9% of the seats with 36% of the vote, which is kind of sad, I guess. But then look at the other part, like that's a huge overrepresentation, but it's way worse when you look at how bad the underrepresentation is for the other parties. Actually, SNP got overrepresented as well because they run very locally. Because their vote is very concentrated, they get more seats than votes. They get double representation, double the power in any House of Commons. Same if we look at the Lib Dems, they get the opposite because they're spread across the country. They get 8% of the vote, but they got 1.2% of the seat. It's even worse somehow for the Green Party, who got 3.8% and of the vote, 0.2% of the seats, and so much worse for UKIP, where again an eighth of people did vote for them. They decided not to vote tactically, and bear in mind in this election, 1 in 8 voters already voted tactically. 1 in 8 voted for a party they believe in. Even if you don't, and probably you don't, right? UKIP has turned into a weird thing these days, but even if you don't agree with UKIP, 1 in 8 voters wanted them in power, and they got 0.2% of that. So realistically speaking, 12.4%, or again, that full 1/8, were entirely ignored. That's a quarter of the electorate right there, just between tactical voters and UKIP voters. Pretty rough by itself. Then consider the Lib Dem voters, the Green voters, and then you can start to realize like, oh yeah, every election, about a third of the electorate is just ignored. It's just thrown away. It's just kind of the whole thing there. And the only real argument against this that I can understand, because obviously there needs to be a better voting system, but what should the better voting system be? I kind of understand that whole argument. But let's, instead of like thinking about it like in those wavy terms, how about we instead look at past elections and we talk about how distorted this one's kind of gone? Because the big argument for this system existing is to produce majorities. And let's ignore the fact that in 2017, this map right here didn't produce a majority. It looks like it did because blue constituencies tend to be much bigger than red constituencies. Look how many red there is here compared to look how few blue there is here in the borders region. Because again, generally urban areas tend to vote that tend to vote left over right, and that's why you can that's why you see these being concentrated areas right here, because that's just how it works in most countries. The UK is no exception. But let's look at some real results from the past, how this gets even worse than this, because this is kind of rough that this results in that. But let's go back to 1983 and let's look at how this went for the third party that's promising electoral reform and always kind of has in some way. Because yeah, if you don't like that 1/8 of people get ignored this way, if you don't like that 1/8 of people get ignored this way or have to vote for a party they don't agree with or believe in this way, if we ignore those things and say, well, I mean, we should all get together, we should vote for a better system. Let's say that happened in 1983, where the Lib SDP alliance got 25.4% of the vote, and they got 23 seats, which, if you're curious, at the time was about 5% of the seats, whereas the Labour Party got 27% of the votes, and they got 200 seats. They got 8 times more seats, with 2% more of the vote, because it was much more, it was much more concentrated in one area. This means that you get penalized under the current election system because, again, the clear argument there is like, better concentrate the vote more. This is what the SNP does very well. Their vote is concentrated entirely in Scotland, which means they don't even need to win seats by very much. This was won by 4% of the vote, it seems like. If you look around a lot of the seats in Scotland, they're actually on the same thing. Won by very, very, very minor majorities, 0.5% of the vote over here. But because they're winning by small amounts, and because that's all you need to win by, that means their small vote share can result in a lot of seats. And again, it doesn't really matter how much you win by, it just matters that you have the largest number. These are both on the same number, 32.86 for both. Does it show us the majority was 2? There was 2 people that decided this one going from, orange to yellow. That's insane, right? Northeast Fife. I wonder if that's going to change this election. The fact that that's a thing that can happen where even the blue party and the red party, together if they combined, they'd have more votes, any combination of those. But instead, you're forced to vote for one party. Kind of rough, but, toycat rants about electoral reform. Whatever, I would prefer it if you could... I got this crazy idea. What if you could vote for a party you agreed with that had the same general beliefs and values? But you might say, well, I mean, you know, there should be a stable, you know, parties that run across the whole country. But bear in mind, the current electoral system rewards you for concentrating your support in one area. The Lib Dems have their support spread out across the country, and as a result, they don't really do well. Again, the Liberal SDP Alliance, which was it's the reason they're called the Lib Dems, because you might think of them as being like a left party for the purpose of like, oh yeah, we need to get the left voters from here to here, right? But the reality is they've got a center-left faction and a center-right faction. It's really weird because the Liberals are like classic liberal, like British liberal, like libertarian almost, whereas the Democrat part is like social democrat. It's a weird party that it exists as a whole. You know, again, they've got electoral reform, which is nice, you could say, if they actually could do well on the system, which would lead to it. But yeah, then you look at this system and you're like, okay, so they got way fewer votes, but that's fine. 1983, you know, we needed things to happen then. And you can see the trend just continues over and over again of like, oh, they lost a seat with 22% somehow. Okay, that's rough. Well, I'm sure things get better for them. Okay, they lost some more seats. And yeah, you can kind of see that trend continue. And to the point where it gets to 2005, where things are vaguely looking up, right? And you might say, you know what, the third party is getting screwed. I mean, they got more seats here, but at least there's one thing you can say about first past the post. You can say that it leads to stable majorities when the country can't decide. When there's three parties in pretty close contention, 35, 32, 22, you might think that it should go kind of like the electoral thing, right? Like, oh yeah, so what was that seat? Northeast Fife? Like, that's Dundee East. But yeah, if we look at if we go back to here where the majority is literally 2 votes, if we, you know, you need to pick a MP for that constituency somehow. Let's pick the one with the most votes, and then that way they can have at least a representative from a consistent party. Ignoring the fact that you ignore 68% of that constituency, you might actually think it's a good idea. And I think that's a strong argument for defending first past the post. Like, yeah, you get stable governments. Again, ignoring this was a hung parliament. If we actually look, the electoral system as it exists right now is actually biased against, you know, again, just, we talk colors, it's biased against blue. And you might think, nah, that's what the, you know, the right media, the Murdochs, whatever thing want you to believe. But let's show actual election results here. Here's the 2005 election where Labour under Tony Blair, oh sorry, the Red Party under Tony Blair got 35.2% of the vote, which is a respectable amount. It's a little bit over a third, but it led to a majority of 25 seats roughly, of 20 seats actually. And then if we look at the same share, so bear in mind 35.2 in 2005, if we look at 2010, the Blue Party got 36.1. I will tell you right now, I did the maths, I crunched numbers, 36.1 is higher than 35.2, but as a result, because the vote was more concentrated, it led to fewer seats, and it means there was no majority. This means that to actually make a majority, they had to join with the orange party over here, and they had to get 50, you know, between them, I should say, 59% of the vote together just to equal what was previously done with 35.2, which is pretty wild, you might say. Even if we just take this result by itself, there is a clear, I don't want to say bias, but the numbers themselves, the seats and the way they're laid out, have a strong, you know, thing in favor of Red Party over Blue Party. Here's another example. You can see how even though 36 versus 30, the 30%, you can see how the numbers hold up in different ways. It's very weird stuff that basically leads to, I think that one actually is the counter of my point, but you can see how, you know, in general, the current boundaries, and the reason behind it is simply because the boundaries haven't been redrawn in forever, and no party is ever going to vote for boundaries that hurt them, and there's a hung parliament right now, so no party is going to vote for new boundaries. But yeah, they want to reduce the number of MPs. But yeah, there's also the fact that blue votes tend to pile up in areas like, look at this. Look at this constituency. Look how blue it is. Look at this constituency. Look how blue it is. Look how blue they all are. Whereas if we go to a random Labour constituency in the middle of the city, oh, that's maybe Newcastle is not a good place to get a mixed place. If we go to a random, you know, one in the middle of London, you're gonna start to see how like, oh, actually these are solidly red. Actually, if we go to Westminster, maybe, okay, Kensington, there we go. Majority of 20, you know, votes in this seat. They usually tend to be much more closely contested in these central seats. There we go. It's you know, just a few, because yeah, cities have much more diversity and mixed up stuff, whereas rural areas are very rural and have a very strong lean towards the Blue Party, as you might just imagine. Jesus, they're all this way. Almost every blue, like, big seat, you can see it's the same thing. There's, here's Corby, which is actually a kind of close one. Northeast Bedfordshire, as you can see. It's, my point here, the reason I'm saying all of this is, look how close they are. Even if we go to, like, Cambridgeshire, which should be super studenty, right? Okay, no, it's super studenty. But, yeah, you can look around and you can just kind of see, like, yeah, Cambridgeshire, all blue as soon as you get outside the city. My point of this whole video, is just to say, really, in long story short, that elections be really wacky in really strange ways, and the real loser is not going to be, it's not going to be, the red man or the blue man, or the yellow woman or the orange woman, who coincidentally are both Scottish. Yeah, in case this comes across as too pro Lib Dem, leader of the Lib Dems right now is literal Scottish woman. Can you vote for a Scottish person? I couldn't do that. I don't know if I will do that, actually. I might do that. But yeah, no, the problem is, you need electoral reform, and you can't... If you vote for a party that has it in their manifesto, like in 1997, where 43% of people did, by the way, most successful red result in a while, but people don't like this type of red. They think it's not the right type of red. But if you look at the like the number of people who voted for it, then as soon as they gain power on that platform, it's like, oh, actually, we benefit quite well from electoral reform, eh? And then they don't fix it. And yeah, the same thing's kind of happening in the reverse, but like, oh yeah, while the system benefits you, you don't fix it. As soon as it stops benefiting you, you try to fix it, but it's not benefiting you, so you can't get in power. I think there needs to be proper, I think this stuff shouldn't be decided by the people in power, but yet it always is. And it leads to a system where it doesn't matter who you vote for. You can argue pretty confidently no. Also, look how rough this election map is. Look how weird it looks to me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching today's video. I'm actually looking forward to watching the results live on this one. I'm just going to be depressed at the number of people who are forced to vote for the two major parties. Because for the longest time, it was going down. People were like, yeah, we can vote how we want to. Again, say what you will about this election, but only 66% of people decided they had to vote for the main two parties. But that number's going up. Even right now, just with the polls alone, we're at 76%, and it's going to rise by election day. More and more people are voting not for who they believe in, not for the parties whose values they share and have in common. They're voting for the party they don't... They're voting to get away from a party they don't like. And that's depressing. We don't live in a world of positive politics, of making a change, of making a difference. We live in a world of being scared of fear and using our vote as best we can to avoid it. So don't believe people when they say you have to vote for the blue guy to avoid the red guy. Don't believe people when they say you have to vote for the red guy to avoid the blue guy. It might be better in that way, but your one vote means nothing. Your vote is meaningless. If enough people decide to vote for another one, that vote does become meaningful. This is what I hate about tactical... actually, this is my channel. I'll make a rant about this. I'll probably remove this later because this is a bit too diving in the political weeds here. But I hate when people say like, oh, you gotta vote to keep the bad person out. No, the way it works is your one vote is worthless. Even in goddamn Northeast Fife, even if we go literally here, if you decided to... Wait, is this Northeast Fife? No, this is Dundee West. I don't know my Scotland well enough. This is Northeast Fife. I've been to Dundee. It's a nice city, by the way. Exception to my anti-Scotland rule. So anyway, you can see right here, here's Northeast Fife. Even if you have never voted before, you vote in this election, and you happen to vote for the Orange Party because you want to keep the yellows out, or the yellows because you want to keep the blues out, which doesn't make sense in this constituency, but it's how they campaign. So let's say that's your thinking. Yeah, no, you'd have to vote for Orange. Even you alone, in the most marginal constituency, this is a wild result, which there isn't one closer in the UK. We can confirm that, but I assure you it's true. Even in this seat, you don't make a difference, because you know what? No one person makes a difference. It's all our collective thing, and if you think it's all, if you're one vote, do what you want with it. And if you think your vote is worth more than one vote, you're like, oh, I actually decide elections by myself because I'll tell my friends, they'll tell their friends. It'll become a significant thing. What if everyone thinks that way, toycat? And if everyone thinks that way, then you could believe in yourself. And again, this is a funny system because these are actually third and fourth parties. But if we go to a blue-red seat, and I'm sure we can find one around here somewhere, in this seat where for some reason the voting looks like Romania's flag, in this seat right here, you can vote for the others if you want to, who will get 0.6%. Or in this seat, there we go. There's orange, there's light blue, and there's green. You can vote for any of those three parties, and if everyone does it, it will turn green. It will turn light blue. It will turn orange. It can even turn blue, which actually requires quite a big swing. You don't have to vote for the people in charge right now, or the people who are most likely to oppose them. No matter how much the people in charge right now and the people who will likely oppose them would like you to believe that. Both the Reds and the Blues have a huge interest in convincing you that you vote for me or you're wasting your vote, but that is not how... voting for what you believe in is not wasting your vote, and if someone lets you believe that it is, then I don't know, man. Like, you know, if you're gonna vote for someone you don't believe in, vote for the monster raving loonies at least. That's all I ask from you, my good friends. Anyway, thank you very much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it in some way. Who should you vote for in this constituency? I don't know for sure. This is actually one of the ones that's like, it's going to be interesting to see on the night, right? It's going to go, like, who's not going to vote for the Prime Minister of the country? But, you know, if we have a wild shake-up election, who knows for sure. But yeah, anyway, I hope you all enjoyed today's video thing. If you did, then let me know in the comments. Again, generally speaking, like, when we talk about elections, I remove not soon after, I would like to be surprised. I'd like to see red, orange, green, blue. I'd like to see something interesting happen. It just won't, though. That's, you know, we got the science kind of locked down. But thank you for spending your time with me today, and I hope you choose to do so again. Second channel, don't care about this video. Goodbye.